Today we're talking about how to understand fast Spanish. If you ever want to be able to converse in Spanish, you have to learn to understand Spanish natives speaking at their natural pace. But here's the thing, I'm not going to give you the standard advice. I'm not going to tell you to do things like listen to a lot of Spanish, listen to Spanish that is at your level, or look for comprehensible input, because that's not what you need. What you need is to understand the science. What does science actually say works best when it comes to improving your listening skills in Spanish? Well, in this video, I'm going to share some of the key findings from research that tell you how to improve your listening comprehension most effectively. And some of these things rarely get discussed on YouTube, but they have worked for me, and I guarantee if you incorporate all of these tips into your language learning routine, you'll be able to understand fast Spanish natives better, and they will be able to understand you better too. Now, to get into the research, you first need to know what an interlanguage model is. Researchers love this term. They often talk about a second language or interlanguage model, which is like a mental map you carry around in your head for your target language. Like, imagine you move to a new city. At first, you don't know the area at all. You may know the street that your house is on, but if you get just one block away, you could get lost because your mental map is incomplete. But after a few months, you can travel out in all directions and you'll be able to find your way home because your map of the new city is getting more accurate and more detailed. Therefore, researchers love to ask the question, how do we most effectively improve the interlanguage model we have in our heads for a second language? Now, the first area of research for listening comprehension is rhythm. When we compare English and Spanish, we find that English is a stressed timed language and Spanish is a syllable timed language. Stress timing means that we speed up and slow down around stressed syllables in English, whereas syllable timing means that the time between each syllable is more or less the same. Now let's work through an example so you can understand what this sounds like. So if I take a sentence in English like, parents buy books. This has 4 syllables, but in terms of rhythm, we usually say it with 3 beats. Parents buy books. Now these 3 words are what's known as content words. They carry the meaning of the sentence. But we can also add function words. These are words like the, to, of, and even will and be. They usually hold the sentence together and show the relationship between the content words. So for example, we can extend our sentence and say something like, the parents buy the books. This has 6 syllables, the parents buy the books, but we still say it with 3 beats. The parents buy the books. We race through the word the because our beats happen on the content words. Now we can keep adding function words. We can say something like, the parents will buy the books. The parents will be buying the books. The parents will be buying all the books. The parents will have been buying all the books. So now we get to a sentence that has 12 syllables, but still only 3 beats. The parents will have been buying all the books. Now, if we translate this sentence into Spanish, we get, los padres habrán estado comprando todos los libros. So we get a sentence that basically has 16 equal syllables. So when you compare English and Spanish sentences like this, it can feel like 3 beats versus 16 syllables to transmit the same information. That's why Spanish feels fast. But there was a fascinating research paper put out in 2019 where they compared 17 languages and came to the conclusion that all languages encode at similar information rates at about 39 bits a second. So this means that you won't get more total information in a shorter time frame in Spanish, but you will get more syllables. Now, in our example, we hear 12 syllables in English, which feels like 3 beats, and 16 syllables in Spanish. And on average, both languages will deliver this information in around 2 seconds. Now, also, when your first language is English and you listen to a syllable-timed language like Spanish, you may be looking for content words to carry more weight. And when they don't, you can miss important information. So if this was an English sentence, it might be something like, los padres habrán estado comprando todos los libros, where we emphasize padres, comprando, and libros. But Spanish doesn't sound like that. So what does the research say you can do about this? Well, many scientific papers studying rhythm focus on improvements in pronunciation, but this study specifically measured improvements in both speaking and listening skills. The researchers looked at Persian students studying to become simultaneous translators of English. And in the experiment, the control group attended their regular interpreting curriculum, and the experimental group attended the same curriculum but got 20 minutes per session replaced with explicit training on English prosody, things like rhythm, stress, and melody. So the experimental group were learning about function words and content words and doing drills like we looked at earlier. So things like parents buy books versus the parents will be buying all the books. Now, the researchers said that the results showed that the experimental group performed better than the control group in simultaneous interpretation performance. Moreover, the study revealed that prosody training enhances the students' perception skills more than that of production skills. Now, more relevant for us, we have this study that looked specifically at native English speakers learning Spanish, and they compared 4 different types of pronunciation training. Group 1 received musical rhythm training where the students chanted Spanish words to a metronome beat. Group 2 were taught the phonetic rules and received some pronunciation drills with correction and repetition. Group 3 listened to native Spanish speakers and tried to imitate them without any phonetic explanation, and Group 4 received no specific training. Now, at the end of the experiment, the researchers analyzed the acoustic changes in their production of Spanish, and they had native Spanish speakers rate their speech for how strong their accent was and their comprehensibility. Now, the researchers concluded that upon comparing training effects, we found that musical training yielded the most phonetic changes across all measurements. So in our example, los padres habrán estado comprando todos los libros, you can use clapping or rhythm drills or a metronome to help you maintain Spanish syllable-timed rhythm. In this study, they list the average syllable rate of the Spanish language to be about 7.8 syllables per second. So what you can do is you can download a metronome app, and I will pull one up that I found on my phone here. And as you can see, we can adjust the speed of our metronome to help us practice with syllable-timed rhythm. So at 7.8 beats a second, metronomes normally give beats per minute. So we need to times by 60. We end up with about 460 beats a minute. This is the natural pace of Spanish, but our metronome only goes up to 250. So this will be slower than natural pace, but it's still a good way to practice. So we can do this. We can try to stay along with the beat. Los padres habrán estado comprando todos los libros. Los padres habrán estado comprando todos los libros. Los padres habrán estado comprando todos los libros. So this will help you stay on that syllable-timed rhythm, keeping each of your syllables to the metronome beat. Now, something else we can do is we can slow it all the way down to the slowest speed, and at this speed we get a beat every 2 seconds. And for our sentence, at the average pace of Spanish, 7.8 beats a second, we end up with about 15 syllables in 2 seconds. So if we modify our sentence and take out the word todos, we can then use this rhythm to produce Spanish at natural pace. Los padres... I've got to get it right on the timing. It's a little bit hard. Los padres habrán estado comprando los libros. Los padres habrán estado comprando los libros. Los padres habrán estado comprando los libros. Now you can practice this with any Spanish sentence. Look to come up with sentences that maybe have about 14 syllables, and then you'll be able to fit each of them into 2-second windows. Now, research shows this will strengthen your interlanguage model of the Spanish language, which will improve both your comprehension and your pronunciation. Now, the next area of research is on pronunciation training of individual sounds. This study looked at learners who received targeted training on segmentals, things like vowels and consonant voicing. And it found that this kind of training led to clear improvements in how well learners could hear and identify specific sounds in the new language. As the authors put it, the group trained on segmentals improved in the perception of vowel length, final devoicing, and the voice onset time as reflected in both the discrimination and identification tasks. So when you train your pronunciation of individual sounds, this gives you the fine-tuned listening skills you need to understand subtle pronunciation differences between words. Now on this channel, I talk a lot about drilling Spanish vowels and emphasis. These are the most important sounds to focus on. So practice your Spanish vowels. A, E, I, O, and U. And try to make them as clear as possible. When you're working on your vowels, I recommend you slow down because we saw earlier that in English, we race through function words and we can't do this in Spanish. We have to keep constant rhythm with our syllables and accurately nailing each of our Spanish vowels. And when you do this, even at slow speeds, you will improve your interlanguage model, which leads to better comprehension. Now, the next area of research is connected speech. This is where words join together when natives are speaking naturally. Now, in this study, the researchers had 62 intermediate students studying English at university, and they broke them into two groups, where one group attended their normal English classes and the other attended the same classes but got 2 additional 1-hour classes per week of instruction on connected speech. They taught the students connected speech patterns in English like this shoe. When we speak quickly in English, we lose the S. We say the shoe. The shoe. We don't say this shoe. That S tends to disappear. We also have friends of mine. When we speak really quickly in English, we lose the D of friends and we lose the F of. So we say friends of mine. Friends of mine. How would like you to meet some friends of mine? Then longer sentences, things like, what do you want to do? When we speak quickly in English, this really contracts down. We get, what do you want to do? What do you want to, wanna do? What do you want to do? The results showed that the group receiving connected speech training made significant gains in listening comprehension compared to the control group. The findings highlight the necessity to teach connected speech recognition in English as a foreign language curriculum to improve learners' listening comprehension ability. Now, on this channel, I often talk about connected speech. And there are 3 ways that speech connects in Spanish. The most common is where we have a word ending in a letter and the next word starts with that same letter. When this happens, these words end up getting joined together. So if we take this sentence, it happens twice. We have the E's that come together and the A's that come together. Now, often they create a longer vowel sound, and in most cases, you will lose a syllable. So to break it down, we have me encanta aprender. We have 7 syllables, but at natural native pace, it will become me encanta aprender. We end up with 5 syllables. Me encanta aprender. Me encanta aprender. Then we have the second way that Spanish connects sounds, and that's where 2 consecutive words have different vowels. When this happens, the vowels can merge into one diphthong. Now, a diphthong is where we have 2 vowel sounds pronounced within 1 syllable. So if I change the sentence to this, to break it down, we have me encanta un montón. And we've seen that those E's come together, but also the A in ta and the U in un becomes taun. Taun in 1 syllable. Now, in addition, the N of un becomes an M when it's followed by a word that starts with an M. But this actually happens in English too, so this joining will likely come more natural to you. In English, we say something like, in my opinion. We say that quickly. We say, in my opinion. In my opinion. That N disappears. Or in music. In music. In music, right? So this will be something you're kind of used to. So in Spanish, we have me encanta un montón. Me encanta un montón. Me encanta un montón. And while preparing for this video, I actually found a clip of a Spanish YouTuber talking about one of her favorite books, saying this exact phrase at normal pace.
Una de mis autoras favoritas, me encanta un montón, me encanta un montón.
Now, the last way that words connect in Spanish is when one word ends in a consonant and the next word starts with a vowel. When this happens, the consonant migrates or links to the next vowel to maintain fluid speech. So take this sentence. If we say it slowly, we have mis amigos están aquí. But that first S will join to the A, the next S will join to the E, and the N will join to the A. So we have mis amigos se están aquí. If we put it all together, mis amigos están aquí. Mis amigos están aquí. Now, I remember personally learning about this with the title of this book. A Spanish friend of mine pointed out that the first L gets pronounced with the al. So instead of saying el al, which I was really struggling with, it becomes el al. So it's el alquimista. El alquimista. El alquimista. Now, another similar example that I also struggled with as a student of Spanish would be this. I was really trying to put it all together. El aeropuerto. So this needs to become, the L will move across. So we say el aeropuerto. So not el aeropuerto, but l'aeropuerto, el aeropuerto, el aeropuerto. So practice this yourself. Work on your own production of these connected sounds. Even if you practice at slow speeds, you will improve your linguistic model for Spanish, which research shows leads to improved listening comprehension. Now, the next area of research is regional accents. In my recent video on listening comprehension, someone made the point in the comments that regional variations in pronunciation can still drive me nuts. So there is a concept in listening research known as high variability phonetic training, HVPT. Now, this in simple terms means listening to multiple speakers of a regional accent to hear how each speaker makes subtle adjustments in their unique use of the regional sounds. This helps listeners build a robust mental model and adapt to variability. In this study, researchers looked at training Japanese natives to improve their ability to hear the R and L sounds of English. They took 5 English natives, 3 male and 2 females, who each recorded 100 minimal pairs, red versus lead, rock versus lock, etc. Then group 1 got the natural recordings as is. And for groups 2, 3, and 4, the researchers used signal processing techniques to modify the recordings to enhance the R and L sounds through changes in speed, pitch, and pauses. Our researchers found that all 4 groups improved their ability to recognize the R and L sounds in English at about the same rate. They went on to conclude that training with natural speech is currently the best method because the signal processing techniques used here are more labor-intensive and offer no additional gains in performance. So if you are trying to adjust to a Dominican accent or a Chilean accent, which I know from experience can be tricky Spanish accents, it can help to listen to multiple speakers, female, male, older, younger, maybe someone who speaks a little faster and someone who speaks a little slower. This can help you adjust more effectively to the regional accent. Then, like the training we spoke about earlier of working on your Spanish pronunciation with individual sounds such as vowels, you can do this with regional accents. Learn how the sounds of the regional accent you are interested in change and then practice them. For example, the double L, Y, S, D, C, and Z sounds can vary a lot between regional Spanish accents. Like if we take this word in Mexico, it would be llegar, llegar. But in Argentina, it would be llegar, llegar. So that double L goes from almost a Y sound to an SH sound. Now, the other thing that can help with regional accent development is a technique known as shadowing. In this study, researchers invented a fake regional Dutch accent to help test how well participants could adapt their listening skills to the new accent. They had 6 groups: a no training group, a passive listening only group, a group that repeated out loud in standard Dutch, a group that had to provide a written approximation of what they heard, an imitation group with auditory feedback, and an imitation group with noise so they couldn't hear their own voice. Researchers found that only the 2 imitation groups with and without auditory feedback showed significant improvement in comprehension. Researchers concluded that training with sentences spoken in an unfamiliar accent improved comprehension of that accent, but only when participants imitated the specific pronunciation of these sentences. They then went on to say that the results support the revised version of the motor theory of speech perception, according to which comprehension of speech relies on sensory-motor integration between perception and production mechanisms. In layman terms, if you want to learn to understand a difficult regional accent in Spanish, try to imitate that accent as best you can, speaking out loud. The motor theory of speech perception is the most interesting thing that I found in the research, and it's a hard concept to get your head around. So when you physically move the parts of your body for creating sounds such as your lips, tongue, jaw, and vocal cords, this creates a feedback loop with the brain that can enhance listening comprehension. So to summarize findings from the research, if you want to improve your listening comprehension, practice Spanish sentences with rhythm drills, use clapping or a metronome to help you maintain a syllable-timed rhythm. Work on your pronunciation of individual sounds with a focus on vowels and emphasis. Practice connected speech where you join the identical letters in consecutive words, combine different vowels in a diphthong, or join the consonant at the end of one word with the vowel of the next word. For regional accents, listen to a variety of speakers, learn how the individual sounds change in the region that you're interested in, often it's consonants for the Spanish language, and use shadowing. Imitate the speakers as closely as you can, speaking out loud. So as you can see, I've focused this video on the research for sounds and sound development for a second language. Another big part of listening comprehension is learning vocabulary and grammar. Now, I considered including the research on this in this video, but it would have turned into an absolute monster of a video. So if you'd like me to do another video on the research for the most effective ways to learn vocabulary and grammar, please do all the things. Like, subscribe, and share the video with someone you think could get value from it. And let me know in the comments if you would like me to go into the research on the most effective ways to learn vocabulary and grammar in an upcoming video. Now, I'll put a link to my video on how to not sound like a gringo. This is the most important one for improving your interlanguage model for Spanish. You'll learn all about Spanish vowels and how your English vowels can interfere with your interlanguage model of Spanish in subtle ways.